Welcome to another episode of DD on the Spot. As always, I'm your host, Ryan Johnson. And before we get into it with our guests here today, I'd like to remind everyone that if you enjoy this content, to please give a like and subscribe down below. I'd greatly appreciate it. We have Kamara Graham on the podcast. She's coming to us all the way from the UK, and she's an IFBB fitness pro on to share her health and fitness journey and, basically talk all things health and fitness. And we couldn't be more excited to have her on. But most importantly, she's our current guest. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
Well, since I love to torture myself, I got to ask, what is the weather like in the UK today?
Oh god, it's been a nightmare actually. It's very cloudy and grey. It's been raining really bad all day, like on and off. We've been having like a lot of kind of like storm kind of weather, so very windy, cloudy, overcast. Yeah, it's not the best.
Yeah, that is just yeah. I mean, hey, but that's the UK for you. But before we get into that, because I don't want to depress half of our viewers, and plus the fact that it's sunny here on me, I don't want to really rub it in. Why don't you first off give us your backstory on what really inspired and motivated you to get in shape, and how that led to you becoming a fitness pro?
So from a young age, I was always into a lot of sports, a lot of athletics. Like around school and things, I did like gymnastics, taekwondo, swimming, trampolining, like sprinting, running. I did all sorts of sports before, like after school and things like that. And I think the one sport that I really took to was gymnastics. So I did gymnastics and competed in gymnastics from the age of 6, and I progressively got better at it, and to the point where I was doing about 30 hours of training of gymnastics a week. At this point, I obviously stopped all my other sports and just kind of focused on this one. Um, and now I did that up until the age of 17, 18, and I dislocated my shoulder in training. Then this injury kind of set me back then. So I then had to take 2 years out to recover. I had to have a lot of rehab work on it and things like that. Just because afterwards I've got drop shoulder, which is where like if you hold any sort of weight in your shoulder, in your hand, sorry, you just kind of drop your shoulder just kind of drops out. And that was kind of an issue for around about 2 years. So I didn't do any gymnastics training during that time. In that time, though, my gymnastics coach did advise that I went to the gym and just kind of kept up a little bit of strength, flexibility, and things like that, and just general health. So I was training in the gym, and obviously, I noticed a couple of people, well, one girl in particular that competed. And I just thought like she was a lot more muscular than me. I was very small. I was only like a gymnast, so I looked at her and I thought, wow, she looks amazing. And so that for me was like the kind of point where I decided I'm gonna do a show. And obviously, once my shoulder was better, I did go back to gymnastics, but I could never be competitive in gymnastics. And that was just because the squad that I was training with had like 2 years on me, if that makes sense. So they'd all progressed and I'd regressed, if that makes sense. So I'd kind of gone backwards. I had to relearn skills and I couldn't really get back into it. I still did it just because of the fun and just because I enjoy it and it's something I enjoy doing. But training really become like a big part of my life, like going to the gym and training. So um, then like fast forward from there, like between 6 and 10 months later, I actually stepped on stage. So I stepped on stage very early. I competed and come third in my first show. Went to the British, come second in that show. And then from there, I've done quite a lot of shows. So altogether, I've done 20 shows. And then it just kind of went from there. I just kind of went from show to show each year. Kept competing, learnt more about myself because obviously I prepped myself for my first show. I then did have a coach for around about 3 years, and then took 2 years out. Bought a house, and then decided that I wanted to turn pro. So I just kind of the first show I just kind of dipped my toe in the water just to kind of see what it was like. And then I didn't realize, but I turned pro. I didn't even realize that I kind of rocked up on the day just expecting to maybe place, if that. But I walked away with a pro card. So yeah, that's how we've got to where we are now.
Wow, I mean that is awesome. And one of the myths that I love to bust in this podcast, and we talked about it briefly before we started recording, is that it's gotten better the last 5 years due to Instagram, but there's still so many women that have that fear that if they walk into the gym and they even look at the dumbbells, they're going to put on 50 pounds of muscle overnight. And like I told you before, you'd be the first ever trillionaire. I would spend my entire life savings just to train with you. Did you ever have that fear when you were getting started? And even if you didn't have that fear, I bet you still hear that all the time. How do you like to respond to that?
Yeah, I did a little bit, because I didn't realize how hard it is to grow muscle. And I think a lot of other people just think they if they go in the gym and they do weights and not cardio, that they are just going to get big, and it just doesn't work like that. And I think if anything, I felt so much more confident about my body since training, because it's got more shape. When I was a gymnast, I was quite strong in the sense of being able to physically lift my own body and hold my own body. But to look at, I was like a stick. Um, to look at, I was very, very slim. I was very underweight, and now I'm so much more confident about my body. So for me, it's been a good thing. It's been a really good thing getting into bodybuilding, and yeah, there is massive stigma around being a female and weight training, but honestly, it takes so much more than you think to actually grow. Like, I'm 7 years down the line now. Like, this for me is 7 years down the line, and I am physically trying my hardest to gain as much muscle. And I'm by no means big, do you know? So I mean, some normal person might think that I'm quite big, but I don't see myself as big. Like, I look at the physique girls and I'm like, wow, like that is insane for me. Like, that is so good, and they must have put so much effort into getting where they are. So yeah, it's really admirable now that I look at it.
Well, absolutely. And I mean, one thing that I love to add on to that is that, I mean, this is one thing that I think impacts women so much more positively than men, but it impacts men as well, is just that confidence boost that working out gives you. We have heard hundreds of stories on this podcast of women who have, either been able to make life-changing decisions, it's helped them become more assertive. I always say it's that one thing that you take from the gym and you can use to impact every single aspect of your life. How have you personally taken that, working out and that positivity that comes with it and that confidence boost and use it to impact your life in a positive way?
I definitely think when I did gymnastics, I didn't really eat that much. I was very quite. I wouldn't say I had a negative mindset, but I just wasn't aware how much I was under eating. So since kind of getting into bodybuilding and training and things like that, it's kind of had a positive effect on my mindset with food, how I view food, my physique in general. I'd probably say my health as well, because when I was a gymnast, I just don't think I was that healthy because I didn't really think that much around about food. They never really gave me the nutrition advice that I probably needed. Whereas now, since getting into bodybuilding, I'm very like, what's the word?
Enlightened?
No, I'm very particular about how I go about my day and how I eat and things like that. So everything is down to a T. Everything is routine. And I think since getting into bodybuilding, for me, like the biggest positive thing that I can take away from it is the hard work that I put into and how much I channel into my bodybuilding. I've kind of learned that I can use that in other areas. So I can use how I channel all my like I kind of like put everything into bodybuilding. I can do that to other things. So I can do that with relationships, with friends, with family, with work, with business. And I've kind of learned to be able to not just put everything into bodybuilding, but I can also do the passion that I put into bodybuilding, I can put that passion elsewhere. So it's really kind of gave me the discipline is probably the biggest thing.
Well, yeah, in my opinion, I mean, if you get through a prep, I mean, you can do basically anything. I mean, if you just get through all that goes into that. But I mean, on top of this, I love to talk genetics too, because in this day and age, everyone's on social media and I hear this all the time. Oh my God, I want his arms. I want her abs. I want their back. People just don't understand that you don't know how that person got to that look. I mean, for all you know, they were just born blessed genetically. And I mean, like I've said before, I hate those people more than life itself. But everyone always has that one body part that really, really takes off that they don't have to train as much. And then everyone always has that one body part that really, really drags behind that they have to train to oblivion. What were those body parts for you when you were getting started?
So the one body part I've always struggled with is my back. And that I still think that that's a weakness now. I've definitely brought it up a lot this off season. I think it's probably eating itself. It's like nearly doubled in size, which is great. So hopefully next time I get on stage, I will actually have a back. But yeah, definitely back was my biggest weakness. And I think it's more down to the mind muscle connection that I've just not had. It's just not been there. But it's definitely getting better, and it's definitely got better the last 2 years. Now, strengths, I'd probably say like my shoulders and glutes are probably the body parts for me that grow the fastest. I currently, like I mentioned, I don't train arms at the minute, and I haven't for like 10 months, but I do now that I've added them back in. And I don't actually train glutes directly either. I've kind of stopped that as well, just because they're very overpowering, and it would be fine if I was going to do wellness, but I'm doing fitness, so I just don't want them to grow anymore. Especially my back. If you look at my back shots on my Instagram, you'll see my glutes are very overpowering. Um, and I just kind of need to my back with it being a weakness. My glutes are so big, it makes my back look smaller. So I need my back to kind of catch up to the size of my glutes and hamstrings, and then I'll probably be in a much better position. But yeah, shoulders and glutes have always been the one to just grow.
Yeah. I mean, I love asking that question because it shows, that everyone is different when it comes to their body parts, and you're never going to end up looking just like someone else. But I mean, nutrition is the most important thing when it comes to this lifestyle other than sleep. But I mean, it's just so important. It's 80 to 90% of the results that you're going to get. And what were some of the bigger nutritional changes that you made when you first got started in this journey?
I definitely say that I didn't realize how much you should really be eating to grow. Definitely, um, obviously transitioning from gymnastics to then coming into bodybuilding, I wasn't eating enough protein. And then at that point, that's when I started kind of counting calories and macros and things like that, and kind of learning a lot more about nutrition. And I kind of worked out that I wasn't eating enough protein. I was only going from like eating 3 meals a day, and never really tracked how many calories I was on at all. I was very slim, so I didn't really need to. But then since then, I've kind of always like known or tracked how many calories I am on, and I think since increasing my protein, that's probably been like the biggest game changer for me. And then the fact that now in my off seasons and stuff, like I mentioned, I do really push my calories um, quite high, and yeah, that's probably been like the biggest change for me is actually the amount of food that I am eating.
No, yeah, and it's, yeah, you are gonna have to put on, all that food if you want to put on that size, and yeah, and that's one of the good parts about it too about bodybuilding. I tell people is that yeah, you can eat more food and do that. Now again, it's not gonna be like gourmet burgers and stuff like that. It's gonna be a lot of chicken and rice, which is one thing that I think a lot of people just assume is with bodybuilding, but not everyone follows just that. I would love to actually point that out. But also, I mean, this is just with all the stuff that entails in this lifestyle. I mean, what was your friends and family's reaction like when you announced to them that you want to become a bodybuilder? Because I don't think that's normally something that like a teenage girl would say to their parents.
Yeah, so I think my mum and dad was a little bit shocked by it, a little bit taken back, because obviously it's not like my normal gymnastics or anything like that. They kind of didn't understand it. There's never been negative towards it, but they don't understand it, and I still think but they're coming around to it. But I still think they're a little bit like don't really get it. But they know that it's such a big passion of mine, and they've actually never been to watch me at any of my shows, which used to bother me. But now I've kind of come to it, and I kind of understand that they just don't get it. My parents are very old fashioned in that sort of sense. I think they just don't understand. They're fully supportive of what I do. They've never told me not to do it. They've never been against anything that I do. um, but they they do support me, and they are proud of me. But I just don't think my dad wants to see me in a tiny bikini on stage, which
That's
I get.
understandable. Yeah, that's completely understandable, especially for the women that I have on your. Yeah, for the dads, yeah. I mean, that might be a little awkward, especially if they're like a bikini girl and you got to like have your sass and flair. Then I'd be like, yeah, I can totally understand that. Which I mean, but at least that they give you that support because we've heard so many stories on here of people who might not have gotten the support of their parents, and I mean, it just makes things so much harder. And having that support is just so important for you. And yeah, that's just amazing. But I mean, yeah, there's just so many things that entail with this lifestyle. But the one thing that I love to talk about is posing because I mean, I would have never guessed in a million years that posing is the hardest thing for most of the guests that I have on. I mean, it's harder than you're working out, it's harder than your nutrition. I mean, it's so impossible. But what has the posing experience been like for you? Because I mean, it is just for so many people that is the bane of their existence.
So to start off with, for my first show, I actually self-taught myself to pose. I just off like YouTube videos and watching people, which was at the time there was no like because it was 2015, it wasn't like such a big thing. There wasn't so many people near me that was doing bodybuilding. I knew of one person, especially females. Like, I knew guys, but I only knew one female. So I didn't really get any help with my posing. There was no posing coaches or anything like that, which now there's so many people offering posing, be it in person or online. So at the time, yeah, I only had YouTube to kind of learn off of, just watching people pose and kind of self teaching myself that way. Since then, obviously, I would practice every day, daily, and even now in my off season, I still practice daily. Um, but I've kind of evolved quite a lot in my posing. If you scroll down on my Instagram, the posing from my first show is horrendous, like really, really, really bad. But I have had a couple of like posing lessons with one of the girls from the UK called Emma Hindman. She's called the Posing Pro. I don't know if you've heard of her, but she's really, really, really good. I've had a couple of like sessions with her, especially before my pro debut, and she helped massively. But in between that, so in between being an amateur and turning pro, I kind of self-taught myself all the way through that. Just watching, posing, picking up tips off different people, just kind of listening to everybody else around me. And probably could have got there a lot quicker to where I am now if I actually had got someone else to teach me. Um, but I was just quite stubborn and kind of wanted to do it myself. So,
Hey, there's nothing wrong with that. And out of your fitness poses that you do, what is your favorite pose and what is your least favorite pose?
um, I'd say my favorite one. So obviously, on in ours we do like quarter turns, and they're like the mandatory poses. So my favorite would probably be one that isn't mandatory, which is, we call it the power pose, if you know what I mean. So hands on hips, kind of feet apart. I'd say that would be my favorite pose, and my other front shot where I put my hand on my hip and my arm hangs it off. Similar pose, just twisting at the hips a little bit more. And I'd probably say my worst pose is my back pose. Just because, like we mentioned earlier, my back is probably my biggest weakness. And it is getting there. Like, it has grown a lot in the last couple of weeks. Um, in the off season, so I've got 12 weeks left of my off season. So hopefully, next time I get back on stage, I might actually have a back.
Well, and the only positive for that though is that at least with your back pose, you can put your smile down. You don't have to, be smiling all the time because most people don't understand that, a lot of these competitors, their jaw muscles is going to be the most sore thing after these shows because, you're just smiling constantly. So, hey, at least that's the one positive with the back pose. But what is that experience like for you when you get to finally walk on that stage and show off all that hard work that you've worked months upon months on? Because like for me, for when I played sports, I mean, you were on the field for hours at a time and dozens of times a year. But for bodybuilders, I mean, you guys train even harder than I've ever trained for any sport, and you're only on the stage sometimes for only maybe a few minutes at most. But what is that like for you when you get to step on that stage and show off all that hard work?
Yeah, it does fly by on stage. Like, sometimes you can be on stage for about 15 minutes and it flies by within like 30 seconds and then you're back off. But I think when you're stood, any competitors listening to this, but when you are stood backstage, and they've got you all in number order, ready to go on already. That for me, is, you get the biggest like buzz, the biggest rush of adrenaline, like right before you go on, and you think, I'm actually doing this, and that goes through my head every single time. And I mean, I've done 20 shows now, so you'd think you'd get used to it. Like, no, it still comes back every time. Heart starts pounding, get backstage, you get all queued up, and you just feel so hyped up to go on stage. Like, even just me talking about this right now is getting me excited. Like, I want to go and do it. But no, it's an amazing feeling. Like, you get backstage and you just think, yeah, this is it. I'm actually doing it. So, yeah, I love it. It's a nice feeling.
Well, and I ask this question to every single pro that I have on the show because for so many people, they don't understand that. I mean, for a lot of these competitors, winning your pro card, that is the highlight of your career just because that is the affirmation that, all that hard work that you've put into the gym is finally paid off and you're a pro now and you can compete these pro shows. And what was that moment like for you when they announced your name and you realized, oh my God, I'm a pro now?
Um, yeah, I still can't put it into words. I did an interview after I come off stage, like 30 seconds after coming off stage, and they tried to ask me, and I was like, I don't have the words. But for me, it was amazing because before that, I took 2 years out, and that show for me was just kind of me seeing, just dipping my toes in the water, just kind of seeing where I'm at. and I thought, "Do you know what? I'm just gonna chuck myself in the deep end, get in there with all the like the best federation, and the best girls, the top girls. They was all doing that federation because everybody wanted to turn pro. So to me, that was like, if I'm gonna put myself with the highest standard of athletes, and I'm gonna go with that. So that was me just dipping my toe in that, and I did not for 1 second expect to walk away with a pro card. So for me, it was the biggest shock. I expected to maybe place, maybe not place, depending on who turns up. But I was thinking maybe top five at least, and then I kind of wanted to go away, do an off season, come back and be better. So that was what I already had in my head. I already set that I want to place, and that's what I wanted to go for. And they was crawling out the numbers, and they kind of got to like second place, and I was like, it was me and one of the girls stood there, and I'm thinking like, what? Like, I've either not placed at all or I've won. And I was like, stood with the girl and I was thinking, oh my God, like, what's gone off? And then next minute they call out my name. And honestly, like, I actually cried. I couldn't hold back the tears. I was shaking. It just felt surreal. And then I got back off stage and then they asked me to go and do an interview and I just could not speak. Like, I was crying my eyes out. Like, I got a massive sword as like my trophy. So I come off stage with that, and I was just like crying my eyes out, dragging it along the floor. Honestly, it was the funniest thing ever.
I never did understand why they like to interview the athletes right after they win, because first of all, they don't understand that your brain is basically mush by then because of all the dieting that you've done and all that other stuff. And now that you're finally off stage, it's like, yeah, let's see how these people can embarrass themselves with their answers. And I compare it to sort of like those like Miss America or Miss World like beauty pageants where they ask like these people who clearly are not like Harvard graduates. They try to ask them like how to solve like world problems, and it's like, give them a break. So yeah, I mean, I could not imagine what that must be like to finally like have someone try to talk to you and just trying to focus. Yeah, for me, I wouldn't have even done the interview. I'd be like, I won. That's all you need to know. I'm just gonna go and eat a hamburger now and just go and relax. But on top of that, I mean, I don't want to make your mouth water right now. But what is your go-to post-show meal?
Oh, so do you know what? Like, I know everybody says this, but honestly, pizza. I feel like that's everybody's, but it's just so, I think it's become like my post-show thing because it's so accessible. Like when I did my pro debut, there was nowhere open. So we was in Alicante in Spain, and obviously due to COVID, a lot of things were shut, so it was very limited. There was no restaurants open at all. It was all just takeaway. And we managed to find. We went into the town, and this was very late. It was like 11 p.m. Sorry, like half 11. And I think by the time we got there, it was actually midnight, and we'd rang this takeaway place to see if they was open, and they was like, "Yes, we'll stay open for you to get here," because we said we're gonna order like, I don't know, about 20 pizzas, because there was a lot of us, and they was like, "Yeah, that's fine, but you have to sit outside." We was like, "Yeah, that's fine." We got there, and there's a couple of other pros. We all went out for food afterwards, and they cooked us all our pizzas, and then we literally sat on a bench in the middle. Like, it was like 1 a.m., pitch black. We're all just sat there eating pizza, and it was the best thing ever. And I think it's just because you get off stage and all you want to do is just eat. Um, but no, that was really, really nice. But I think probably my go-to would be pizza. It's just so easy to just grab when you get off stage. Um, but yeah, I do like a burger, but I think I'm more of a pizza person.
Well, you haven't had American burgers. That's your problem, though. That's the thing. If you had American
Yeah.
burgers, then I think you'd be a burger. I mean, just the portion sizes that we have over here, just they're not. So there's this one burger place. It's called Smash Burger here, and literally, their burgers are so big that the burger's outside of the bun and onto the plate.
Oh my god.
Yeah. Oh my god. Like I mean, I might even get one today because today is my cheat meal, so I'm actually planning on maybe going and getting one then today. But yeah, it is just absolutely ridiculous. And yeah, I mean, that's the one thing that I'm very jealous about you Europeans is that, like you said, you can just go to Spain for a show. You can just go to a different country. I haven't even been to another country. I'm like most Americans where I don't travel that much, but I'm 50 miles away from the Canadian border. So one of these days I'm going to go up there and visit those Canucks. But I mean, that's America 2.0. So that really doesn't even count. I mean, let's be honest, they're Americans that just have a different accent and they like to play hockey. That's really the main difference. But yeah, that is just so great. And one of the things that I love to talk about, and you brought it up a little bit earlier, is that I mean, you're not going to be able to maintain that stage look year round, and so many people do not understand that. And mentally, is there any advice that you have for people on just how to be able to cope with that? Because we've heard so many stories on this podcast of people who, you know, they look in the mirror when they're getting ready for their show and they're just like, wow, I just look so amazing. I look so great. And then next thing you know, a week afterwards, they put on, a significant amount of muscle and then, or size, I should say, weight. And then they just get really depressed and, the post show blues. Is there any advice that you have for any competitors out there and how to help them through that process?
Yeah, it's a tough one because everybody sort of sees themselves differently, and everybody's mindset is different around it. But it has taken me quite a while to get to where I am, like mindset wise, to be able to accept it. And that's probably only been the last 2 to 3 years that I've actually been able to accept off season look. Whereas before that, I always used to try and stay lean. And now, if you go through my Instagram when I was trying to stay lean, and obviously not pushing calories as high as I needed to in my off season, that was where I didn't really grow that much. There's 2 to 3 years where I never really changed. And now in the last 3 years since turning pro, um, my growth has been rapid and well, not rapid, but a lot faster than what it has been over the years. And I honestly, like put this down to the fact that I push my calories in my off season. Not everybody is going to be able to eat 5,000 calories. Not everybody would be able to eat my diet. I'd probably say very few people, especially females. Um, but I'm just one of them freaks that can. But I honestly think that the biggest thing you've got to think about when you are transitioning from an off season or a diet to a prep or whatever, and vice versa. I think you need to think that why you're doing this. So when you're coming out of a prep, your as a female, your calories are going to be low, like it's inevitable, especially if you're getting in true condition. For females, obviously, periods and things like that can stop. So post show, you want to be getting that back as soon as possible. I'm not saying pile loads of weight on, but I'm saying you want to be able to get your body back to a healthy level where it's functioning properly. Um, and to do that, you need to gain weight. So for me, when I finish the show, my first thing is health, because we all know that as much as you try and keep a prep as healthy as possible, especially, well, for males as well, but females, obviously, with your period stopping and things like that, they don't always, but if they do, post show, you want to put that as a priority and get weight back on so that they come back. And once they come back, then you know you can kind of hold off and just chill for a little bit at that weight, slowly start increasing your calories. So for me, I kind of jump my calories up initially straight after post show, and then regain my health back first. So the way I think of it is you are doing an off season for a reason. You need to remember why you started the off season, why you are wanting to gain weight, and just think that if you don't gain weight, you're either putting your health at risk or you're not going to progress. I'm not saying like pile loads of weight on, because that's also going to put you at health risk. You need to find a good balance between both. But mindset wise, you just really need to think back to why you are doing this in the first place. Why are you going into an off season, or why are you trying to gain weight and push your calories up? And you'll see all the top pros, all the really good girls, guys, whatever, they all push in their off season. If you don't push in your off season and you're eating lower calories or the same amount of calories as you would like before a prep, just like on a prep or whatever, you're never going to grow. You really need to kind of push into that, and push them calories to be able to grow.
100%. And I mean, yeah, it's a necessary evil. And I love to ask that question because we've had so many stories on here where people who try to maintain that lean look throughout their journey and throughout the years. And, it's going to impact your health in a negative way. And I mean, it shortens careers. I mean, I've not heard that many, unless, like I said, you're one of those 1% genetic freaks where, I mean, again, screw them. I hate talking to them where, I mean, they can actually do that. And I've had out of like the 440 bodybuilders I've had two of them that like were legitimate ones where I was like, there's no way you keep that year round. And then they showed me a photo of when they were like 3 years old and they had like a 12 pack, and I was like, okay, screw you. That's just not even fair. But one question that I love to ask all the women on the podcast, especially because let's be honest, you're not the average looking woman, especially in your 20s that you're going to see outside a lot. So I always find that fascinating whenever bodybuilders are out in public. I mean, they sort of become like mini celebrities. Now, dressed the way that you are right now, it might not be as noticeable, but like especially when you're in your prep and if you're wearing anything out in the sun, anything that shows off any your arms or your legs or anything like that, I mean, you are going to get a lot of attention just because it's human nature to just be like, oh wow, that's fascinating. What has that been like for you, and has it been something that it's been taken you a while to get used to, or is it something that you now just roll with as opposed to what it was before of like just realizing that you are going to get a lot of attention, especially during preps when you're forced to, not wear as much clothing as you would just during the winter?
So I'd say like in general public, um, not that I've not had a lot of bad attention, but I have had some. So really, like, because I work from home, I don't really have work colleagues or anything like that. So it's not like they see me outside of the gym or anything like that. So for me in the gym, I'm very comfortable. I'll happily wear a vest, a sports bra, shorts. I'm very comfortable in that sense, and I'll happily wear them in the gym. And yes, it does create a little bit of like I do get people looking at me and stuff like that. But I think the gym that I'm in, I don't know if you've heard of it, but it's called Ultraflex Gym. They're very big in the UK. They've got quite a lot of gyms. They're based around Yorkshire, but they are sort of branching out now. And the kit is amazing. I know you've probably got really, really good gyms in America, but they're like the highest standard of gyms in the UK at the minute. And everybody that trains from there are a lot they're very serious athletes, powerlifters, bodybuilders, a lot of pro bodybuilders. So being in there for me feels very natural. And I don't get anybody really giving me any sort of negativity in the gym. Whereas if I was to go out and walk down the street in a shorts and a vest, just walking the dog, I think that's where I'd more likely get negativity. And I kind of it took a while to get my head around it. Mainly just guys staring at my shoulders thinking like but I just kind of ignore it. Like
Have,
I've got to
have
the
have
point
you
where
ever
I
got
just
have you ever gotten a bloody hell from anyone?
yeah, like I've had a few. I've had a few. Or like them say like, "Oh mate, she's got bigger shoulders than you." But yeah, I think that the environment that I'm in gym wise is good just because I'm not in like a commercial gym. I think if I went to a commercial gym, I would feel out of place. Whereas because I'm purely in a bodybuilding gym where everybody is a bodybuilder or a powerlifter, it's quite cool. It's I'm very accepted if that makes sense.
Well, and if you went to a public gym too, I mean, you would get asked questions all the time. Like you wouldn't even be able to get a workout in. They'd be like, "Oh, what'd you do for your shoulders? What'd you do for your back or whatever?" Like, and you just, yeah, it's never. And I can remember back in the college years for me, I was a lot bigger than I am now because I've had to get a full time job and do all this, and I still work out 4 or 5 times a week. But just having women come up to me at bars and just feeling my arms and just let's be honest, it was the college years, so I'd pump it up for them a little bit. This is the Ryan Johnson college years. It's a little bit different than it is now, but yeah, I just remember that whole experience, and so I like to equate that to and especially being a woman too. It's a lot more, I think, intense the scrutiny that you get, but yeah, it's just so fascinating. But you did mention shoulders, and since that is the number one area that I have on this podcast, when I ask women, what's one body part that really took off and what's one body part that really dragged behind, shoulders is number one on the list for the body part that took the longest for women. So I gotta ask because I will get killed in the comments down below. Like, why didn't you ask her what she does for her shoulder workouts? Because then I need to get my shoulders to look like that. So what does a shoulder workout look like for you?
So I would usually start with so I've just actually trained push today. So my training split, I train push pull legs. So I do that because then I can kind of train each body part over the course of a month, gets trained like twice a week, if that makes sense. So I'm actually getting extra sessions in. My body responds really well to frequency, so that's kind of why I train like that. I know lots of other people will train all different ways, but that for me is ideal. So my push workout, I would probably start with some side raises of some form. So I usually either do the machine or cables or dumbbells, and then I will go on to my push movements. So today, for example, I did side laterals on the machine. I then did what did I do? Shoulder press, which is a machine shoulder press. I then did high incline on the Smiths. I then did like a low incline close grip press, and that's a machine as well. And then I went on to doing cuffed side laterals, so another side lateral movement. And I do like to keep two in. I always have two side lateral movements in all of my training sessions. Probably one at the beginning as more of a sort of warm up before I get into my presses, and then one kind of after to kind of finish them off, if that makes sense. Um, and then I did a rear delt pull, and what else did I do? 2 tricep movements, and that's basically my push session. Like I said, I've only really just added my arm sessions back in, as I wasn't training them for a while. They just grow and they look overpowering. And because I don't have to do any overhead posing in my category, it kind of makes sense just to drop them a little bit so they don't look too big. I felt like if they looked too big, they'd probably take away from my delts, and we don't want that.
Oh yeah, but yeah, again, like if that was me, I would be crying in the mirror every day that I didn't like train arms, just being like, why can't? Because that I know the reason why I couldn't compete too. Because like if my arms were the one thing that really took off for me, it's like that's the only thing I would ever do. Being a guy, is like I'd be that typical guy where it's like I don't even work legs and stuff like that. But no, unfortunately, like I told her before, I do work legs, and it's I did a time under tension leg workout last week, and it's one of the worst experiences of my life. Where I woke up the next morning and I took about 4 steps from my bed, and I almost fell over, and I was like, yeah, I don't know if I ever want to do this again, but yeah, that is just so awesome. And I mean, there have been so many things that's been happening this last year, especially with COVID. And we'll get into COVID right now because I mean, being in the UK, you guys have a totally different experience than we have over here now. Now that you guys are still in lockdown, until April, basically for the gyms. Like you said, it's just under 5 weeks now. And I mean, we had the gyms closed here from November till about, like early February. So we just had those open back up. But what has this whole experience with COVID been like for you, especially having, the gyms shut down first and then they opened up again and then they're shut down again? What has this been like for you, sort of being able to maintain this lifestyle? And I mean, it just must have been such a hard thing to do, especially knowing the uncertainty of like if the gyms are going to close again and just everything that's been going on in the world.
Yeah, so it's a little crazy over here. It's been kind of like shut the gyms, open the gyms, shut the gyms, open the gyms, shut the gyms, open the gyms for like the last year. So last year I actually started prep in February, and I didn't get on stage till October. So I started in February, and then I think we stopped around about June, or maybe just before June. I was supposed to be coming over and doing the Chicago show, and then we was going to fly from Chicago to Vancouver, and then do Vancouver. There was like a week difference between them, so I was going to do back to back. Chicago and obviously Vancouver show were in July. They got moved and pushed back to I think I I can't remember if Chicago still went ahead or whether it actually just got cancelled altogether. I know the Vancouver got cancelled altogether. I think Chicago went on in actually in October. Um, so yeah, I kind of prepped from February to June. Stopped then. I kind of went to maintenance level calories, just so that I wasn't gaining weight, but then I wasn't still on a prep, so I kind of felt normalish. Just because the gyms went open and I was actually training from home in my garden. And then luckily it was summer, so it was okay. It wasn't too bad. We did have a few storms where I was squatting in the rain and it was like bouncing off the floor up to my knees. So that was nice. Um,
Okay, so when you
but
say you train in your garden, do you mean like your garage or something? Because like I picture you. Oh, actually, in your garden, because like I picture you like working out and there's like roses underneath you and stuff like that, and you're like literally doing stuff like on plants.
oh no, like so I've got like a patio. So it's just like a stoned area in my garden. So I was just like, I had a squat rack set up on there and I was squatting in my garden. Yeah, it was a little crazy. That was part of, I actually did 8 weeks from my prep from the garden. And then obviously the gyms opened back up, and then I managed to actually compete in October. So then I did go back on prep, did another 8 weeks once we was in the gym prepping, actually got myself down, and then we was able to fly to Alicante because it was open at that time. Since then it's closed again, the borders and things like that, and the gym shut. I think the gym shut just as we got back, so the back end of October, and then the gyms shut right up until the beginning of December. They opened again at the beginning of December and was open over Christmas, and then they shut again like the 4th of January. Um, and then they've kind of been shut ever since. So this has been like another quite a long lockdown for us. The first one we did was about 3 months, and this one's gonna have been 3 months. So we've got, I think we go back on the 12th. The 12th is when everyone's allowed back in the gym. I mean, luckily for me, apart from the first lockdown I did train in the garden, but since then, they've actually okayed it that professional athletes can train in a gym. So I am actually okay to train in the gym, and I have got access to a gym to train. So I'm very fortunate in that sense. And I know lots of other people that aren't professionals haven't got access to gyms, so it's hard for them. But I can't wait for there to be an atmosphere back in the gym and to actually see like my friends and stuff in the gym because it's just so dead right now.
Oh my God, yeah, you can't even. Yeah, it's exact same thing here. And I mean, two of the questions that I love to ask, every health and fitness guest that I have on is, I mean, let's be honest, this is the most important thing when it comes to this lifestyle, and I don't care what anyone says, it's sleep. It's the most important thing. And I mean, anyone that disagrees with me on that, I always tell them pull an all nighter and then go and try to work out and tell me what happens. I did that twice in college, and both times, I had to, about halfway through, I just said, screw this. And I went back to my dorm room and fell asleep. But what is your relationship with sleep like? Because I mean, especially when you're on prep, sleep becomes something that's very hard to attain just because you're so dieted down. I mean, your body is just, you're grumbling all night. Your body is just telling you like, give me food, give me more stuff. So it's hard to fall asleep. And is there anything that you like to do to help you get sleep? And I mean, is your sleep better in the off season? Because I mean, especially with COVID, I think you probably get a little bit better sleep now that everything's locked down. But overall, I mean, what is your experience with sleep like, especially in this lifestyle?
So I've always been a really good sleeper, um, but when I am on prep, my sleep obviously is a little bit broken. There's a couple of things I do to help with my sleep. So I even in the off season now, so I kind of am a little bit of a I want to say a little bit of a freak, but I actually think once you become a professional, it's more of a lifestyle and you kind of have to live and breathe like a bodybuilder daily. So for me, there's no real difference between an off season and a prep, apart from my calories get lower. The food, the everything, the structure is still there in an off season to a prep. So this kind of runs through. And the last 2 years that I've been doing this, my sleep on prep has got a lot better. So I go to sleep and wake up at the same time every single day. So it doesn't matter whether it's a yeah, it doesn't matter whether it's a training day, doesn't matter whether it's a rest day. I will go to sleep and wake up at the same time. So I go to bed around about 9, half 9 p.m. So not very late. I usually go quite early, and then I'm up at about half 5, 6 o'clock in the morning, every day. And I usually get up around about half 5 because I like to start work for 6, with my client check-ins and things because a lot of them work shifts. So, they could be checking in from half 4 in the morning till whatever time, till like 9 o'clock. So I usually start at 6 and get all of my early birds done. And then I can be finished by with all my client check-ins by around about 11, half 11, and then I've got the rest of the day to go and train and not have to stress about clients or anything like that. And then I think mainly for sleep, the biggest thing is a nighttime routine. So if you're going to bed at the same time and waking up at the same time every day, your body's going to get into a really good body clock. So like I don't even need to set my alarm. I know it's bedtime by how I feel. Like I'll feel tired and then I look at my phone, 9 o'clock. I'm like, right, bedtime. And I don't really I do set an alarm if I know I've definitely got to be up, but I don't really set an alarm that often, and I do just naturally wake up at that time now, because I've been doing it over a year. A couple of other things that I do, take quite a lot of nighttime supplements. One that I take is called Halicon. Um, it's basically ashwagandha, if you've heard of that before. So it's an ashwagandha supplement. It's got a couple of other little bits in there, but it does definitely help with sleep. So I'd definitely advise taking some sort of nighttime supplement that sort of winds you down, de-stresses you a little bit. There's lots and lots and lots out there. I know being in America, you've probably got different supplements and things like that available, but there is lots of nighttime supplements available. Um, to take. I also think as well, like coming off your phone is a big one. I come off my phone at least an hour before bed, and I also wear blue light blocking glasses. I don't know if you've heard of them.
No, I have not. Is it just like a shade thing that you put on, basically, or?
So these I have got they're over there, but I've got like natural. So you can buy just blue light blocking glasses, and they sell them on lots of websites online, and you can get really expensive ones, or you can get cheaper ones. The cheaper ones don't work as well; they still block, but just not as much. So obviously, your phone, your computer, your TV, everything that lights up in that sort of sense emits blue light. And these new glasses, I've only just got them like a couple of weeks ago. I actually paid for these to have the blue light filter on them. So I actually don't need my other blue light glasses. So if you do wear glasses and you naturally wear glasses, you can ask them. I think I paid like £50 extra to have the filter put on them. But then that means that now whenever I wear these, because I have to wear them for like working and things like that on a computer, it actually blocks the blue light, so I don't get that at all. And the blue light is actually what stops you from switching off. You know, when you're on your phone all night, if you lay in your bed on your phone before you go to sleep, you're constantly emitting that blue light into your head. And I think that when you decide to put that down and actually take an hour off your phone before you go to bed, or wear your blue light glasses if you do need to be on it, it just lets your brain wind down a lot. So yeah, that's mainly all I do, is just make sure that I go to bed at the same time. I wear my blue light glasses, I take my supplements, and I just usually on an evening do something to chill. So I don't work right up until I need to go to bed. I kind of make sure I have that hour to wind down myself.
Yeah, and that is so important. That is great sleep advice. And you're the first person that I've ever had on that goes to bed at the same exact time every night and then wakes up the same time. I'm a night owl myself. So like this last night, I was up until like 3 a.m. and then literally I got up like half an hour before you messaged me on here just to know that we were still on. And I was like, yeah, wow, this is I've done that plenty of times too. Where and I'm not gonna lie, because I'm a truthful person on here. There have been a handful of times where I've had to delay podcasts because I wake up and I was like, oh crap, I was supposed to do the podcast like half an hour ago, and I called. So, but yeah, that's the thing that happens with sleep. But I mean, my number one trigger word on the planet is cardio. I hate it more than life itself. I mean, it's just the bane of my existence. And when I say cardio, I mean like actual running. I'm not talking about like what I did last night where I was on a treadmill for like 80 minutes, just getting like 7 miles in, burning like 900 calories, just walking basically. I mean, cardio, I absolutely hate it, but I understand, the benefits that it has. But unfortunately, when you are a bodybuilder, you kind of sign a deal with the devil where you recognize, the importance of cardio, and you do have to do a lot of it. But what is your relationship with cardio like?
So I actually really enjoy cardio. Like I do actually really enjoy it. But I quite like the stairmaster. Like I would never go out on a jog. Like I just don't see, for me as a bodybuilder, I don't see the benefits. I'd probably injure myself, and I just think I'd probably lose my legs running. So for me, I do like the stairmaster. That's probably my go-to for cardio. But I don't really do that much cardio. So in my off season, I do zilch, do no cardio at all. Um, if I was to do like a little cut and decided that I need to do a little cut just to stay on top of myself, I probably would introduce cardio at that point. On prep, I think last prep I did cardio for the first 6 weeks, and I did a 20-week prep, and then for the rest of the prep, I didn't do any cardio. Um, that for me was just kind of like a booster. So I did that to get the initial bit of fat off, and then we knew that then I just had plenty of time to just chill. And I wasn't exerting myself to the point where I felt physically tired because I was doing too much cardio, which way too many people fall into doing. Um, so yeah, for me, like off season, probably no cardio. I do count my steps, however. I don't know if you guys do anything like that. But I do just wear like a Fitbit tracker, and I just track how many steps that I do, just so that I know that day in, day out, I'm doing the exact same. So I only do about 8,000 steps a day. So I just take the dog on two 20-minute walks, and then that's my steps done for the day. Um, but then on prep, obviously that will increase. I think last prep I went up to 16,000 a day. Um, and my cardio, obviously, for the first 6 weeks, I did about half an hour daily. And then after that, I didn't do any. But obviously, the category that I'm in, so I do fitness, we do have like a 2-minute routine to do. So my routine practice and gymnastics practice for that, kind of, I would say, would count as cardio. So we're jumping around, doing splits, doing backflips and all sorts of stuff, running around like an absolute lunatic for an hour's practice. So that for me would count as cardio.
Well, you're gonna hate what I have to say then, because I used to work at UPS, and whenever we'd be in the holidays where I'd work 12-hour shifts, and this is for like 2 months straight, I averaged about 46,000 steps a day.
Wow.
So can you imagine what my food bill was like trying to just eat all that food that I'd eat afterwards? Like I only ended up with probably about like 20% of my paycheck, because like I would spend the rest of the money just on food right afterwards, just eating constantly. We're talking like 10, 15,000 calories almost a day just because I needed it just to be able to, yeah, it's absolutely insane. And that's what they do to you. And then obviously at UPS, they'll have food courts there that they want you to spend all the money that you make there then so that you don't have, they're tricky like that. But yeah, that's awesome. Then two of the final questions that I love to ask before we wrap things up here. I mean, if someone were to walk up to you and say, we made the decision, you can change one thing about the sport of bodybuilding and everyone would go along with it, what would be one thing that you would like to see changed?
Oh my god, that's such a good question. Um, One thing that I would change. Hmm. Oh, I don't know. That's such a good question.
I can give you my answers, the first that I personally have while you're thinking of yours.
Yeah, yeah, go for it.
Okay, so for me, and this is one that I've heard a lot, obviously, like what we heard from you in the beginning is like with the judges, where you make sure that, the judges are a little bit like more, everything's more even because like you said you got like third in one show and then second in the next like weeks later, so it's like that's one thing that we hear a lot from judges is that like one show they might want you little bit more of a leaner look and the other show might want you a little bit more of a fuller look, and it's really hard for a lot of people to just really gauge how to do that, and it's so I think a little bit more of that fair response, and then I mean, obviously, more pay for the women too, especially when it comes to this, because people do not understand that this is a sport that you're going to lose money in. If even for the men too, normally, I mean, you're not gaining money from this, so that makes it even crazier for me. It's like, why do these people even do it? Then they're spending. I was like, fine, if only I can come up with a sport where I can make all the money off of the people, and then they don't make any of it. So, but no, that's even adds even more respect for me. Where it's like, and they pay to do this too. Like they don't. There's no one's. So yeah, that's another impressive thing. But yeah, those are really the two for me.
Yeah, I kind of agree. I think that that the pay is imagine if like not just like winning a show you got paid like as a professional, if you just got paid and that was your purely your job to train in the gym and to prep, and you got paid a wage for that, just that alone, not from sponsors or anything like that, like purely that would be amazing. Like just to turn pro, and then imagine how much people would be able to put into what they do, if they're not having to think about, oh, I need to make this income to live as well as bodybuilding. Because bodybuilding, people don't realize how much of an expensive sport it is. It doesn't matter whether you're professional or amateur, it's still very, very expensive. You've still got flights, you've still got hotels, you've still got tan, hair, makeup, and then you've got the whole prep to pay for. There's so much to that there is that goes into getting on stage, and I just think for as a professional athlete, I think that if there was that financial support, a lot of the professional athletes would probably do a hell of a lot better because they've got less stress and less things to do outside of bodybuilding, other than just bodybuilding. For me, I think since doing online coaching, that's definitely helped because that fits very nicely around my day, and I really can just put everything into that. And obviously with my sponsors and things like that and filming and stuff, I'm kind of getting to the point where I'm kind of living life like an actual bodybuilder, and that's just all I do. So yeah, it's good in that sense. But yeah, I agree.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, if we were to talk to you a year from today, where would you like to be at in your bodybuilding journey? Where would you like to be at just in your overall life? What are some goals that you would like to have achieved if we were to talk to you a year from today?
Okay, so bodybuilding wise, I am competing the end of this year, October, November time, and they are qualifiers for the 2022 Olympia. So a year from now, I would be hoping to be on my Olympia prep, and hoping to be going to the Olympia. So that is my aim, and I'm gonna try my best to get there. So hopefully, a year from now, I will have qualified the back end of this year for the Olympia.
Have you been to the States before?
No,
Okay, well, yeah, you're in
I have a long time ago. I went to Florida when I was a kid and things like that, but not any time like recently. No.
Florida, America's butthole, basically. So hey, you went to that place. I went there once too for when we had a winter break, or I mean, we had a spring trip for our baseball team in high school. We went to Florida just to go there. So yeah, but that's awesome. Is there anyone that you'd like to give a shout out to before we wrap things up?
Yeah, I just want to say thanks to my sponsors, Trained by JP, and everyone at Ultraflex. Keep killing it.
Absolutely. And again, you guys, we cannot thank her enough for coming on and sharing her story. And everyone, go and give her a follow. I'll leave a link down below. And, buyer beware, you will get inspired. Stop eating all those Twinkies and get off that couch and to start working out. But again, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your journey. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Well, again, you guys, this is Ryan Johnson, DD on the spot, signing out. Have a great day, everyone.